Hey everyone, welcome to Cavalier Insider, our pregame hoops special, the last one before Virginia opens its season on Friday against JMU here in Charlottesville at John Paul Jones Arena. I'm Whitey Reed, joined by the legendary Gerald Hootie Radcliffe. It's not really Gerald on your birth certificate, is it?
No, it's just Jerry.
I don't know. Maybe the Gerald Ramspacker, Jerry the Greek thing was throwing me off. Andrew Ramspacker's dad, who was in town recently. Maybe that's why I got going with the Gerald. That's neither here nor there. Let's discuss this upcoming game, Hoots. JMU comes to town. Obviously, they were an NCAA tournament team last year, their first tournament appearance in a real long time, the Dukes. However, they're going to be missing their best player, Andre Nation, who was a freshman guard last year, and he was suspended for, I believe, the first 15 games of the season. Kind of what are your thoughts heading into this game, Hoots? And then also looking ahead a little bit around the corner, Virginia obviously hosts VCU, in which is going to be a very much anticipated game on Tuesday, the second game of the season, also at John Paul Jones Arena. I figure that atmosphere is going to be really electric. This game versus JMU, kind of like a dress rehearsal, maybe, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a warm-up, and I think Virginia will probably hammer JMU, really, because there's going to be a lot of excitement in the JPJ. People are really jacked up about this team and the possibilities. And, this is not the same JMU team that made it to the NCAAs last year. I mean, they had to go to overtime to beat Philadelphia University in an exhibition game the other day. It's a team I'd never even, frankly, heard of before.
I think Jerry Ramspacker plays for them.
But, I just can't see it being much of a game if Virginia comes out fired up and not too nervous or whatever. And there's no reason for this team to be nervous. They've got too many veterans. So I think it's going to be a really lopsided affair unless something really bizarre happens.
Obviously, one of the big things that everybody will be watching is the player rotation, how Coach Tony Bennett utilizes his guys on what he has the most depth for of his tenure right here. Goes 10, 11 guys deep. The main question is going to be which 9 or 10 guys does he use in these games. Speaking with Tony and some other people, it sounds like he's going to go with a 9 to 10 man rotation is what he's hoping to do. Obviously, that can vary from game to game, and in this JMU game, I would imagine if it turns out how we think it's going to turn out, that he'll probably play pretty much everybody. That being said, it'll be interesting to see the order of which some of these guys come off the bench, particularly in the backcourt there with the backup point guard situation between London Parentes and Devin Hall and Tevin Jones. Which one of those guys is going to get those key minutes, which is important going into the VCU game because, VCU plays that havoc style, the pressure defense, and Virginia's going to need the ball handlers out there against VCU. What are your kind of thoughts on that, and also just how you see Tony utilizing everybody this year? I mentioned earlier today on Twitter that Tony was probably going to start Anthony Gill in the starting five and bring Toby off the bench, Darian Atkins off the bench, Evan Nolte off the bench. So then that, just like I said, leaves a couple guards competing for that last spot in the rotation.
Yeah, just talking to Tony at UVA Media Day and down in Charlotte at Operation ACC, that was one of the big questions about all the playable depth he has. I don't ever remember a Virginia team, not even in the days of Sampson, having this kind of playable depth. So that's one of the challenges he's going to face this year is trying to keep all these guys happy because they're all good enough to play. And court time, playing time is going to be an issue, I think. And that's one thing that he's already talking about is these guys have to accept the fact that not everybody can start, and some guys are going to get more minutes, and it's going to have to be a real team concept to try to overcome that one potential flaw in a really good basketball team. So, some people are surprised that Gill may be starting over Toby, but you got to remember Gill started 26 games as a freshman for South Carolina last year, and apparently was pretty tenacious. And so, I'm sure Toby's going to get a lot of minutes, just like I'm sure anybody who doesn't start is probably going to get a lot of minutes. So it's going to be interesting, like you said, to see the rotation, the sets that they the combinations they play with. And you're right about the VCU game. That's where every possession is going to be very crucial, almost like an NCAA tournament game because of their pressure and Virginia trying to find some way to make sure they don't turn the ball over, give up easy baskets.
I'm most excited about that VCU game to see the fans there, because there's a little bit of a rivalry kind of brewing there. I think ever since Shaka Smart made the comments, whether it was a year or two ago now, about VCU being the best team in the state. He was right. There's no disputing that, given what Shaka's done for that VCU program since he's taken over. But I think that kind of got some people riled up a little bit. And to me, that's just going to be the most electricity in John Paul Jones Arena this year. That looking at their schedule, I can't see a game that's just going to have more juice in the building than that game.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. While VCU was the top program in the state at that time, I'm not sure that's going to hold true now. And this game, I guess, will kind of settle it, at least until the postseason. But I think Virginia's ready to challenge that at this moment.
VCU ranked 14th and Virginia 24th in the AP poll there. And then we were discussing it a little bit off camera there. They go to Davidson a week from this, not to Davidson, but they play a neutral site game in Charlotte against Davidson. So, it's a little bit of a tough early season schedule there with those three games. I'm not quite sure what Davidson returns this year, but we know neutral site games haven't always been kind to Virginia based on what transpired in Richmond against Old Dominion last year, and I'm sure Tony Bennett will be harping on that to the guys before these games that you don't go by what they look like on paper. Yes, JMU doesn't have Andre Nation, but look at that Old Dominion team had a terrible record last year, and I think they were even missing a couple of their key guys, and Virginia still found a way to bungle it. So.
Yeah, and state teams in particular are going to come after Virginia with everything they got because beating Virginia, an ACC team, that makes their season. It's kind of their Super Bowl, and so they're going to see more fire from those teams than they are anybody else. I still think I'm going to throw away a lot of last year because when they were 0-3 against the CAA, I believe, early on, but even at Old Dominion, Virginia they didn't really have a backcourt. They had guys suspended, injured. Joe Harris had to go to the hospital when they left there and he went home for Christmas. He was so sick he had to go to the hospital.
Right.
It was just a really depleted Virginia roster, particularly in the backcourt at that time. So I'm going to throw that stuff away. I think Virginia's going to be mentally ready and physically ready, and I think they're going to get off to a roaring start.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Last year at this time, Virginia, 0 healthy point guards on the roster heading into that season opener with the John Tell injury and the suspensions and everything else. Now they've just got a plethora, 3-4 guys who can play the point. Malcolm Brogdon will probably get first crack in the starting lineup. But it's going to be an interesting, fun year. We'll probably be back next week to discuss how these first couple games go. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here on the last installment of the preview series. But be sure to follow us here all season long, and also on Twitter. Jerry Ratcliffe, is that the handle?
Absolutely.
And at Whitey's World 365. Thanks, everybody.